Hey everybody, so I wanted to just talk about the idea of being a wallflower in boot camp versus standing out and making yourself known, and is one better than the other? So as some of you may know, I was a yeoman in boot camp, which means that you are not a fly on the wall. You can't be. My job was basically to keep the accountability of everyone in the company, which means if somebody was signed out of the log, or if somebody was away from the company, they better be signed out on the log, and they better be wherever they say they are. And if someone isn't answering and their name's not on the log, that's on me. And if anybody didn't slash their zeros when signing in and out or signing out on the watch log, that was on me. And so there was a lot of pressure with that, and I and the other yeomen would get punished, unfortunately, for other people's failures, because their failures were our failures. The big one was always the slashing the zeros. We ended up working together to find solutions to mitigate that, to lessen the chances of those things happening, and I'm not going to share all of those because some of that you need to experience, I think. But I have talked about that in a general sense, that in boot camp, you have to find solutions sometimes that are a little bit outside of the box without being non-compliant. Don't ever disobey an order, and don't ever lie or cheat or anything like that. I'm not advocating for that. I'm advocating for using your brain and finding solutions to make your life easier. Having said that, the point of this video is it better to be a wallflower so that you don't get noticed? I would say no. The reason for that is there's a couple of reasons. If you're a wallflower and you get discovered and the CCs realize they didn't notice you and didn't give you enough attention, they will give you a lot of attention. I remember we had a fellow who was on light duty for 4 or 5 weeks. Way too long. He shouldn't have been, in my opinion, he shouldn't have been with the company because he wasn't able to work out with us. He should have been on medical hold. But when he finally got off light duty, they just murdered that dude on the quarterdeck. And I remember he couldn't do a push-up, and the rest of us had to keep doing push-ups until he could do one. So that was frustrating. But my point there is that when you're a wallflower, you're not getting the same experience, and you don't have the same kind of respect from the company commanders, which is going to kind of segue me into the second point, which is there's a trade-off for that extra responsibility and that extra punishment, which is a certain kind of respect and even leverage from the CCs when you are efficient at doing your job. And that manifested itself in a few ways for me. One of them was, I remember they did like a random spot check of our rucksacks, and they were looking through our notebooks. And I had drawn a picture of my piece, they call it, my rifle, and with the nomenclature pointed out, and with little notes pointing to the different parts. And I didn't know that was a problem, but the person next to me had the same thing, and they confiscated his notebook and threatened him with reversion. Now, he actually didn't get reverted, but they reverted him and then brought him back that night. So they basically, he had to pack up his whole locker, and he had a sea bag. I remember him leaving the squad bay in the walk of shame, thinking that he had been reverted, and then they brought him back that night. I don't know if they changed their mind or if they just were trying to psych him out or what, but he was essentially reverted and then unreverted. But for that picture, I had the same picture, and the CC looked at it and just walked away. Now, I don't know if in fact it wasn't actually even a problem, because the guy who got reverted, he had said, it's just a drawing of my piece for studying purposes. And they were like, tough shit, like that's not acceptable. And they didn't say anything to me. So either they just made that up for him so that they could justify reverting him, or they just looked the other way when it was me, because I was efficient at doing my job, and they respected that, and they didn't revert me. So there were other situations like that as well, where I think that, you know, it's there's a certain self-respect that comes with taking those hits, and there's a certain confidence that you gain when you recognize that the CCs see that in you, and that's why they're keeping you at that job. And that's why they're holding you to that expectation, because they know that you can do it, that you can meet it. And I remember the night before graduation, one of my company commanders actually shook my hand and had told me that I had done a good job. And, you know, that moment that he said that, he didn't say it in quite those words. He was a little bit more colorful with the language, but it really sat with me, and always remembered that. I think that, you know, personally, I don't judge anybody. I'm not a judgmental person. I've talked about this before, that there are people that are going to get through boot camp by cutting corners and maybe doing a half-assed job. And unfortunately, there are also people that are going to do that in life, in the Coast Guard and out in the civilian world. And that's just a reality of life. And it's true that maybe you can effectively kind of eke your way through difficult situations by cutting corners, by doing things half-assed, by hiding in the shadows or on the wall. And hey, I'm not anybody to judge about that. You know, I don't have a problem with it. It's not how I choose to operate. It's not what I value, but it's possible to do that. So I can't say one way or the other that, like, it's better to be one or the other, but I just I can only speak for myself and say why I think it's good to kind of let yourself be out there, be vulnerable. You know, it's a risk and reward situation. The more you put yourself out there to allow yourself to be scrutinized and punished, the more credibility you build up as an efficient Coast Guards person, as an efficient person in general, and a leader, and somebody that holds yourself and your shipmates to account. And that's something that, you know, it's an invaluable trait that can't really be trained into you. You kind of just have to have it. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that. Let me know if you have any other questions, and as always, hope everybody's doing well, and good luck to you if you're going off to Cape May.